let's take it way back to the beginning of 2U, before there was a business. These were tough times economically. We were in recession.
That's right.
Your industry more or less didn't exist in most cases. So let's start with, how did you sell the vision? How did you say, okay, I and my teammates have this grand vision for how we can redefine higher education in a time when all these factors and a lack of an industry to really prove that it's valuable, it could be, might not. How did you do it?
Well, I can tell you first and foremost, you're correct. 2008 was a tough time to start a company. Lehman's collapsing, venture capital was pretty much shut down. And our value proposition at the time, we had no SaaS solution. We had a very small team and we had a great idea. And that was basically to convince a great school to make online students equal to the on-campus students. But it's not obvious. I mean, for most of online education's history, proprietary education dominated the space and you had really low quality options. And so we're going to a great school like USC and saying, we'd really like you to make these online students that you've never seen before equal to the on-campus students in every way, same rights and same responsibilities. And I sit here today incredibly thankful that USC had some big believers in the power of an individual student, and they said yes, but Scott, it's not obvious why.
So it's interesting because there's also multiple stakeholders in sort of the building of this company. You have the schools, but this is a very capital intensive business to get programs started. You have to develop not just the technology, but the programming, all different types of investment.
That's right.
So you also had to get investors on board this during a really tough economy where, this sort of investment is not in any way, shape, or form sort of a common sense investment by most standards.
To the point where if some of the individual team members that were part of the founding team were not independently wealthy, unfortunately that was not me, we wouldn't have made it through. I mean, my current COO, Rob Cohen, he paid the payroll twice. Not easy to literally write a check out of your banking account for 22 employees. The fact is, 2008 was a pretty brutal time to be raising venture capital.
What do you think the difference is between the folks that did and didn't raise money in that time? Obviously, there's a lot of companies that talked a great game about innovation in the future, but when there is a consolidation of, frankly, risk, because people don't want to necessarily deploy so much capital when they're not sure what's coming around the corner, what makes the difference between getting your vision across and proving it out in a very early stage where you don't have that proof of concept and not getting the money?
I'm sure this is an overused term, but people have to believe. I mean, passion matters so much, and we really did believe in the idea. We knew the technology was there. We knew we could build a great solution. We needed to convince a great school to actually treat online students as the real thing, and that was the not obvious part. The reality is, you're right, from a financial standpoint, the company does take a significant capital risk up front. But these universities have been around for hundreds of years and they're taking a huge reputational risk. You certainly don't want to be the dean that launches the online program that actually causes a 200-year-old brand to have a problem. So we were fortunate to be able to convince first USC and then Georgetown to be able to do this and really do it in a transformative manner. Now, the root of your question, what's interesting is in 2008, we actually were not successful raising very much money in 2008, which is why I do say that we were fortunate to have a founding team that was able to get us to 2009. Now, by the time early 2009 happened, the market started to recover slightly because venture capital was literally shut down when Lehman was collapsing. They were not investing in anything. Now, by early 2009, we actually had generated a little bit of traction, and the fact is we were able to convince a couple of really forward-thinking venture capitalists to go for it. But it was a very short list. I mean, obviously, as we did Series B and then D and then C and then D, we actually had a much easier time over time. But A and B were not easy.
Chip, was there ever a time when the cards were on the table, everybody's scratching their heads, you haven't seen the traction yet because it takes so long to build out these programs and negotiate these partnerships, where you just said, this might not happen?
There are a couple of existential moments, no question. One was in late 2008. We were struggling raising the money, and Rob Cohen had to write a check. The other was once we had launched in 2009, bridging into 2010, made a series of mistakes that really ultimately could have cost us the company, just like any company. And fortunately, I really believe there's one reason that we made it through and that I'm sitting here today having just IPO'd the company is focus. Focus. It is the one thing that I would say most strongly to young entrepreneurs. It is so much more important than anyone gives it credit for.